Stream every episode of Line of Duty before the new series on BBC iPlayer.
Now on BBC One at 10 o'clock, the BBC News with Hugh Edwards.
Tonight at 10, easing the lockdown in England. The Prime Minister says the data will dictate the timetable for the months ahead. Some experts suggest it might be possible to ease the lockdown at an earlier stage because of the success of the vaccination programme, but the Prime Minister struck a more guarded note.
Cautious and prudent approach to coming out of lockdown in such a way as to be irreversible. We want to be going one way from now on.
A world first for the UK. Dozens of young and healthy volunteers will be exposed to the coronavirus to help scientists deepen their understanding.
Anything that we can do to shorten the pandemic is so unbelievably worth doing. So it's kind of, I guess it's that which is really driving me.
We'll have more on the trial and on the debate about easing lockdown. Also tonight, the Duke of Edinburgh, who is 99, is in hospital tonight. The palace says it is a precautionary step. The United Nations is to raise the case of Princess Latifa, who accuses her father, the ruler of Dubai, of keeping her imprisoned. And Handford Parish Council is back, but does it descend into another verbal bust-up?
And coming up in sport on BBC News, Stefanos Tsitsipas comes from 2 sets down to beat Rafael Nadal and move through to the Australian Open semi-finals.
Good evening. The success of the vaccination programme has made it possible to consider lifting the COVID restrictions at an earlier stage, according to one of the government's scientific advisers. Professor Mark Woolhouse of the University of Edinburgh told a parliamentary committee at Westminster that there were reasons to be more optimistic because there was more confidence in the scientific data compared to last year. But other government advisers sounded a far more cautious note. And the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, said he was taking a data, not dates approach, which would go in stages. He's set to announce his plans next Monday for easing the lockdown in England. Our health editor, Hugh Pym, has the latest.
It'll be one of the most difficult decisions he has to make, at what speed to start easing the lockdown in England. The Prime Minister's hoping the rapid rollout of vaccinations will help for his plan to be unveiled on Monday.
It'll be based firmly on a cautious and prudent approach to coming out of lockdown in such a way as to be irreversible.
So what do experts think about when restrictions will ease? Schools in England could start reopening in 2.5 weeks' time, but families and businesses want to know what else might open up and when. Today, one expert was optimistic based on vaccine numbers and falling cases.
My conclusion from that is if you're driven by the data and not by dates, right now you should be looking at earlier unlocking because the data are so good.
You're muted.
And speaking to the same Commons committee, another scientist was also upbeat.
I think if we're cautious, we should get, it won't be completely normal, but things will start to look much more normal by spring.
MPs were also told scenes like this on some British beaches last summer were not the problem some people thought.
There was an outcry about this. There were no outbreaks linked to crowded beaches. There's never been a COVID-19 outbreak linked to a beach ever, anywhere in the world.
The number of daily reported cases was very low last summer. Then it picked up in the autumn and really surged in January to reach a peak before falling back sharply. But there's still a lot of pressure on the NHS. The number of patients in hospitals on ventilators is still only just below the peak last April. And that's even with doctors less inclined to use ventilators for patients this time. So how much can vaccinations help? There's agreement that the programme has gone very well so far, but there was a warning there was a lot more work to do to ensure sufficient community protection.
Don't unlock too fast, because if you unlock a lot, whilst a lot of the most vulnerable are still unvaccinated, genuinely we risk disaster, frankly.
And what role is there for mass testing? There's been talk of lateral flow kits giving rapid results being sent out to households and workplaces as lockdown is eased, but there was a note of caution about their use.
Where we've used them most successfully, I have to say, is where they've been self-tests, but in a semi-supervised environment. So there's somebody there to take the results, you log the result, you know who's had what test.
The Scottish Government will next week announce its plan for moving out of lockdown. The First Minister said a sharp fall in deaths amongst the over 85s in recent weeks was the first hard evidence of the positive impact of vaccination. Hugh Pym, BBC News.
Now, in the first trial of its kind in the world, dozens of young and healthy volunteers, all carefully selected between 18 and 30 years of age, will be exposed to the coronavirus in a safe, controlled environment. The study will begin in the UK in a matter of weeks, following approval from the clinical trials ethics body. And scientists hope it'll give them a deeper understanding of the virus. Our medical editor, Fergus Walsh, has more analysis.
This is where trial volunteers will spend just over 2 weeks in ensuite rooms at the top of the Royal Free Hospital in North London. There's quite a view and all meals provided, but the stay includes being deliberately infected with coronavirus. The aim is to find the smallest possible dose that will trigger an infection.
We believe the risk on this trial is incredibly small because they are young, healthy adults. Most of them will even be asymptomatic, but we're doing everything we can to make sure we're monitoring it and mitigating it.
Future trials will be used for head-to-head comparisons between different vaccines and how well they work. But this initial study should also yield important information about COVID.
In no other kind of study can you understand what was happening right at the beginning of the infection, how much virus comes out of people's noses, and most importantly, amongst asymptomatic people who we think are an important contributor to transmission in the community.
The volunteers who do spend 17 days here at the Royal Free Hospital and attend their follow-up blood tests over the course of a year will be compensated to the tune of £4,500. But it's altruism rather than money that seems to be the main motivation. Alistair is 18 and has already signed up. He's been campaigning for the trials to take place as a means of speeding up research into vaccines and the virus.
I think challenge trials are really, they are going to shorten the pandemic. Absolutely anything that we can do to shorten the pandemic is so unbelievably worth doing. So it's kind of, I guess it's that which is really driving me.
Challenge trials have a long history. In this study in Oxford, volunteers drank a solution laced with typhoid bacteria to test whether a vaccine they'd had protected them. It's an approach that should help find new COVID vaccines and treatments in years to come. Fergus Walsh, BBC News.
Let's have a look at the latest official figures now then. They show that there were 12,780 new infections recorded in the latest 24-hour period. An average of 12,289 new cases were recorded per day in the past week. And just over 21,000 people are in hospital with coronavirus across the UK. In the last 24 hours, 738 deaths have been recorded. That's people who died within 28 days of a positive COVID test. That number is almost a third lower than at this time last week. On average, 583 deaths were announced every day in the past week, and the total number of people who've died is 118,933. A look at the vaccinations, because almost 365,000 people had their first dose of one of the 3 approved vaccines in the latest 24-hour period. And that means just under 16 million people have now had their first jab. Let's go live to Westminster, talk to our Deputy Political Editor, Vicky Young. The Prime Minister today, Vicky, saying that this is all about data. And we heard one of the experts there saying the data is looking rather good as far as he's concerned. So where does that leave Mr Johnson?
Well, I think every time he gets in front of the camera, you hear the word caution, don't you? And I think there's an awful lot of expectation management going on because they're really trying to balance the very good news about this vaccination programme alongside the idea that you unlock too quickly. So what they're talking about here is reopening in stages. We know schools will be at the beginning of that process, hospitality likely to be at the end. But I think what's interesting is that's in the short term, if you like, but ministers also in Whitehall discussing the longer term, some other issues really of how we live with coronavirus for quite some time. That could mean that mass testing is with us for some months, if not years, in schools, in workplaces. But there's ethical issues that they're wrestling with too. What if an employer says that everyone who works for them has to have a vaccination? How might people be able to prove that they've been vaccinated in order to travel? All of that is in the longer term, but no doubt about it, Boris Johnson wants to be cautious. That approach is going to irritate many people, including some of his own MPs, but I don't think he's going to change his mind.
Vicky, many thanks again. Vicky Young there for us with the latest at Westminster. The Duke of Edinburgh is spending his second night in hospital in London. Prince Philip, who is 99 years old, was admitted last night, and Buckingham Palace said it was a precautionary measure after the Duke had reported feeling unwell in recent days. His condition is apparently not related to coronavirus, and the Duke was said to be in good spirits when he was admitted. Our royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell has the latest, and Nick's report does contain some flashing images.
He's been retired for more than 3 years now, and he's remained largely out of public sight during the lockdown. This was an exception. July last year, when he took his leave from the Rifles, one of the regiments of which he'd been honorary colonel-in-chief for many years. The most recent image of him is this, at Windsor Castle with the Queen, a photograph released by the palace last November to mark their 73rd wedding anniversary. Prior to that, there was a photograph of the couple together last June on the occasion of the Duke's 99th birthday. And for the royal doctors, it will no doubt have been his age as much as anything which will have persuaded them to err on the side of caution. The Duke has apparently been feeling unwell for several days, so last night at Windsor Castle, his doctors decided to admit him to hospital. At 2 o'clock this afternoon, the palace issued a statement. The Duke's admission is a precautionary measure, it said, on the advice of His Royal Highness's doctor after feeling unwell. The Duke is expected to remain in hospital for a few days of observation and rest. The Duke is in the private King Edward VII Hospital in London. It's understood he was driven there by car. It was not an emergency admission. It is not COVID-related, says the palace, and the Duke is said to be in good spirits.
He's a no-nonsense sort of man. I think he would be embarrassed by the fuss and would not want it. I'm sure he's in good spirits. He's always in good spirits.
The Duke was admitted to the same hospital just before Christmas 2019 for treatment of an undisclosed condition. He left after 4 nights to join the Queen at Sandringham.
Anxiety on top of everything else.
Today, the royal family has been continuing with business as usual. This was Prince Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall this morning at a hospital in Birmingham. The Queen has remained at Windsor Castle. She too is carrying on with her duties, but inevitably, in everyone's mind will be the fact that the Duke is now just 4 months short of his 100th birthday.
And Nick is with me now. So they say this is a precaution. Should people be reading a little more into it?
I don't think there is anything to suggest that the situation isn't as the palace has described it. There's always a degree of sensitivity about medical issues. You always wonder whether you're getting an accurate impression of what's actually going on. So let's look at the evidence. There is no sense of alarm among officials. One of them said that he'd been admitted to hospital through an abundance of caution because of his age. It wasn't an emergency admission. We're told he walked into hospital. There's no COVID link. And, of course, the royal family are continuing as normal. The Queen took a call from the head of the Royal Navy this afternoon. She had a call last night to the new ambassador to the United States. No sign, no suggestion of anything amiss. Now, we know that the Queen and the Duke have been at Windsor throughout the lockdown, nearly a year now, obviously. They've been carefully shielded. They've both had their COVID vaccinations. But tonight, the Duke is back in the King Edward VII Hospital for the first time since just before Christmas 2019. The visit, precautionary, that seems plausible, I must say. It is for observation. Well, I dare say that observation is going to be very close and very careful.
Nick, many thanks again. Nicholas Witchell there, our royal correspondent. Now, the Foreign Secretary, Dominic Raab, says the case of the missing princess, Sheikha Latifah, the daughter of the ruler of Dubai, is deeply troubling. In secret videos broadcast by the BBC yesterday, the princess accuses her father, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, of holding her hostage. Mr Raab said Britain would follow the case closely, but he played down calls for sanctions to be imposed on Dubai, which is a close ally of the UK. Our diplomatic correspondent, James Landale, has the latest.
I'm a hostage, and this villa has been converted into a jail.
This is Sheikha Latifah, a princess but also a prisoner in solitary confinement somewhere in Dubai. She says she's a hostage of her father, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the ruler of Dubai who shares a passion for horses with the Queen and owns swathes of land across Britain. The princess's friends released these videos to rouse international support. The Foreign Secretary said the case was troubling and people would want to see she was alive and well.
We are concerned about it. I think anyone at a human level would watch the footage and be concerned about it. I think the right mechanism is via the UN, which is already underway, and we obviously support that and watch what they find and what we see further in the developments on that very closely.
That UN process will be led by the Office of the High Commissioner for Refugees in Geneva, which said it would raise the case with the UAE. The princess's friends said they were reassured the international community was listening, but others said more action may be needed.
The UK government and other governments should look to impose sanctions on the UAE authorities if they don't uphold human rights. We have the laws in our country and in other countries to do that, to impose sanctions, to prevent people from moving around, to ensure that their assets are not misused. So those measures should be taken.
The Foreign Secretary, chairing a UN meeting today, played down the idea of sanctions, saying they needed to meet a strict legal threshold. The question for diplomats here at the Emirati embassy is whether the case of Princess Latifah will tarnish Dubai's reputation as a destination for business and tourism. Will investors and visitors turn a blind eye, or will they turn away? Every year, more than 1 million Britons visit the UAE for their holidays. Every year, both countries trade goods and services worth £18 billion. But at what price?
The idea of going and holidaying and luxuriating on a beach in Dubai, when we know that behind closed doors terrible things are going on and there's no respect for law and that justice for women is not taking place, that should concern us as people who travel, if we ever travel again.
So far, Sheikh Mohammed has made no comment, his long-standing position being the princess is safe in the care of her family. For all the international pressure, there's no sign yet to suggest he's feeling it at home. James Landale, BBC News.
So let's take a look at some of the day's other news now. The head of the company that made the flammable cladding used on Grenfell Tower has admitted it told a misleading half-truth to a British Standards Board. The public inquiry into the fire has heard that the French manufacturer Arconic didn't share the results of a failed test while applying for a product certificate, but the company's president denied that it was deliberately concealed. Lord Frost, who served as the Prime Minister's chief Brexit negotiator, has been given a seat at the cabinet table and a ministerial post overseeing the UK's relationship with the European Union. Among his responsibilities will be representing the UK in any trade disputes resulting from Brexit. A deadline of May the 1st for all international troops to be pulled out of Afghanistan is set to be extended because of a surge in Taliban violence. This year marks the 20th anniversary of the American-led invasion, and troop withdrawal was central to last year's US-Taliban deal, which was signed by President Trump. but now under review by President Biden. For the latest, let's join our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucette, who's in the Afghan capital, Kabul.
Yes, well, this question is the top issue on the agenda at this crucial NATO meeting, which began today and continues tomorrow. It's the first time that the new US Defense Secretary is meeting online his NATO counterparts. And when it comes to Afghanistan, there are no good options on the table. If they don't stick to the May 1st deadline, the Taliban are vowing to intensify this war. If they do stick to it, there are even greater concerns. NATO doesn't believe the Taliban have kept their commitments, that they haven't cut ties with al-Qaeda, they haven't made a genuine effort to negotiate a peace deal. So at this critical hour, there's a push, a frantic push to get the Taliban back to the table. But there are also plans by Afghan and NATO military planners to prepare for a ratcheting up of this war. A stark snapshot of a gathering storm, the National Police Hospital. Doctors tell us they've never seen so many patients. There's fighting in so many provinces now. This policeman took a bullet.
The Taliban blew up a vehicle outside school, so I went there to help get the children out. The Taliban started shooting, and we fired back. I was shot. The bullet hit me here and come out the other side.
And they're braced for more. This is a training exercise, but it's all too real. Afghan police on the hunt for suicide bombers and civilians trapped inside. The government gave us access to film this. As Taliban warn, if the US deal breaks down, there'll be more of this. The Interior Minister thanks his men and a few women. What's his advice to Washington?
I would say let's review what the Taliban agreed to. Did the Taliban cut their relationship with the terrorists? Did the Taliban respect that? Or the Taliban willing to peace? If not, that they should not. If not, then Taliban should know that the international community will remain.
A Taliban call to arms. They insist they've kept their commitments, that foreign forces must be out by May. If not, they'll be attacked. On the streets, there's already a wave of targeted killings. Every day, a blast or more. No one claims them. Many blame the Taliban. 18-year-old Ramin survived a horrific Taliban suicide bombing.
Now when I leave home, I say goodbye to my family. We don't know if we're going to make it home alive or dead each day.
20 years after US forces came in, there's no easy way out. Violence may surge, whether they stay or go. There is still talk of peace and plans for war. Lise Doucette, BBC News, Kabul.
Now, last night we reported from a hospital in North Wales on the staff who are maintaining urgent medical care which is not related to the pandemic. And tonight we talked to some of the support staff at Ysbyty Glan Clwyd in Denbighshire whose work is essential in keeping the hospital going. Staff say the pandemic has brought them all closer together and that medicine, in their view, will never be the same again. Our correspondent Jeremy Cook has this report.
A hospital at the heart of a rural community, at the centre of the COVID crisis. Every part of Glan Clwyd Hospital
take you to a ward when we've got some space.
Is stretched by the pandemic. Doctors and nurses can only do their life-saving work
Your arms do your blood pressure.
if the behind-the-scenes support staff do theirs. And tonight we're meeting them, everyone essential.
We just sanitize your hands, my friend.
If you're looking for a hero, how about Gary?
Hi, mate. Can I help you?
On duty at the entrance to A&E. COVID rules mean it's a tough job.
I was assaulted here boxing day. I ended up with a fracture of my face here, a big elbow, and then stabbed on my back.
Have you ever wondered if it's all worth it?
I've done this job for 43 years. You do it because you've got something to give.
Ward 7 are still escalated.
In the hub, An update on patient numbers, beds, waiting times.
Quite a challenge today. We've got 32 patients waiting for beds.
Paul is briefing Emma, the medical director.
Ward 9's just closed, so unfortunately we've lost another bed there.
His job is never easy.
Ward 3, I've got the ITU patient.
With COVID, it's never been harder.
How are you doing with it?
I think we're all tired. You're dealing with ward staff and ward nurses. You can see that from time to time they are tired and frustrated with the relentless pressure that's on the system.
To ease the pressure, there's this, Deeside Leisure Centre, now the Rainbow Hospital.
How are you? Are you feeling okay?
Good.
A year ago, it was a skate park, gym, squash courts.
I might not be clinical, but as an operational person, I do want to consider, would I want my family to be treated in there?
This is Laura's baby. She's the project manager who converted this
sorted your take-home medication
to a 420-bed hospital.
My grandmother became a patient here back in December, and actually within 5 days she did pass away. She wasn't on her own, she was in a lovely environment, she was cared for with lots of dignity and respect, and I couldn't have asked for more, to be honest.
She'll be going on infusion in a minute.
Back at the district hospital, medical staff are crucial, but so are the cleaners, kitchen staff, the workshop guys who fix the beds, mend the kit, the specialist equipment.
I'm just testing one of our ITU ventilators.
That saves lives. Lives like David.
Very proud to be working for the NHS. I love my job.
One of the hospital's own, a porter. And now a survivor of COVID-19.
I was in the life support machine for 4 or 5 days and spent a total of 18 days in hospital.
Did you think you might die?
Yes, I did. I honestly thought, am I going to get through this? I'm passionate about my job, I'm passionate about what I do, and I'd like to do my bit to help other people come through this horrible, nasty disease.
As medical director, Emma's job is to keep life-saving services on track.
This ward is now being used temporarily for patients who need surgery.
And she knows now, more than ever, the crucial role of her hospital support staff.
Medicine will never be the same again. Hospitals will never be the same again. As human beings, will never be the same again. And I, for one, think that as a hospital, we are closer to each other than we were before, and that we have a sense of common purpose.
Are you proud of what's being achieved here?
I'm incredibly proud. I'm incredibly proud.
Jeremy Cook, BBC News, North Wales. A BBC investigation has found examples of potential child abuse on the live video website Omegle. The site claims to be moderated. Its popularity worldwide has soared during the pandemic, with millions of visitors a day, including from the UK. And despite its reputation for disturbing and explicit content, it's frequently visited by children, and international protection groups are increasingly concerned at the availability of so-called self-generated abuse material. This report by Joe Tidy contains details that viewers may find upsetting.
Hi.
Hello. It's a site you may not have heard of, but Omegle has been linking up people for random video chats for years, and it's gone viral during lockdown. Traffic to the site has surged globally from 34 million to 65 million visits a month. It claims to be moderated, but has a reputation for being unpredictable and unsafe. In one 2-hour period during a BBC investigation, we were paired at random with 12 men explicitly touching themselves, 8 naked males and 7 porn adverts. The site doesn't ask anyone to prove how old they are, and we found dozens of under 18s, some children as young as 7 or 8. And it's not just adults doing explicit things. When we searched for chats using a generic sexual keyword, we were randomly paired twice with seemingly prepubescent boys masturbating. One of them identified himself as 14 years old. We ended both chats swiftly and reported the incidents to the relevant authorities. But the Internet Watch Foundation says it too is concerned. It says Omegle is being used by predators to gather self-generated child abuse material.
We do see content that's been generated on the website Omegle, and this type of activity is going on in a household often where we know that parents are present, because there are conversations that you can hear, even children being, asked to come down for tea.
One parent in the north of England told us that her 8-year-old daughter was nearly coerced into sexual activity on the site last month. To maintain her anonymity, we've had an actress read her words.
She witnessed a man masturbating and another man wanted to play Truth or Dare. He was asking her to shake a bum, take a top off and her trousers, which thankfully she didn't do.
Lily and her friend, who was on FaceTime with her, say the site's become a viral craze during the pandemic. They're 16 years old.
Yeah, it was a few months ago our friends started using it, and then we all started just using it. So there's weird men on there. Yeah, loads of them.
There's no way to contact Omegle at all, and we spent months tracking down the website's owner, Leif K. Brooks, in the US. He claims to have actually increased moderation in the last year and says that his site is not for prurient interests. Joe Tidy, BBC News.
That report there, the result of the BBC investigation Joe Tidy was reporting for us. Now, a parish council in Cheshire, which made headlines recently after its rather fiery online meeting went viral, has been back in business tonight. Hanforth Parish Council was preparing to debate planning matters this evening. But as our North of England correspondent Judith Moritz discovered, the council more than lived up to its reputation for rather vigorous debate.
Chair, I'm speaking, Chair. With respect, Chair, I'm still speaking.
A parish council meeting on a wet Wednesday isn't usually gripping viewing, but this isn't just any parish council meeting.
We are trying to do Hanforth Parish Council business.
It's no Strasbourg or Westminster, but Hanforth is on the international political map, or at least it has been since its council planning committee went viral.
Will you please let the chairman
Mrs. Weaver, please.
speak? You have no authority here, Jackie Weaver. No authority at all.
She's kicked him out. Don't.
As blockbusters go, the infamous Hanforth Parish Council meeting didn't know if it was a drama or a farce. Either way, its sequel has been hotly anticipated. The meeting was open to the public, and it's fair to say the turnout was higher than usual.
You probably don't want to appear in that Andrew Lloyd Webber musical, playing the part of Julie's iPad.
The lead character, Jackie Weaver, didn't have a part this time around, but other favourites did appear.
Oh, he's disappeared.
I'll mute myself.
You will be banned to Peru if you're not careful.
Tonight's meeting descended into similar barracking again.
Simply following standing orders and protocol.
The meetings were illegal.
But councillors tried to get through business as usual.
20/5446M.
Some found it funny, others quite the opposite.
And I've just removed them.
Whether democratic nor dysfunctional, like so many sequels, it probably wasn't as good as the original.
I declare the meeting closed.
Judith Moritz, BBC News.
The many perils of parish councils. That's it now on BBC One. Time for the news where you are. Have a good night.